Call to order the Finance Committee meeting for Wednesday, July 28th, 2021. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lear.
Present.
Mr. Sponson.
Present.
Mr. Hess. Ms. Polk.
Present.
Ms. Weber.
Present.
Mr. Payton.
Present.
Ms. Parker.
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Present.
Mr. Fairfield.
Present.
Mr. Featherling.
Present.
Mr. Dunnell.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
Mr. Long. Mr. Hunter.
Here.
Mr. Wheeler.
Present.
Mr. Searoy. We have a quorum.
I have one request for public comment. If you'd use that mic over there, please. Mulumba Bay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Malumba Bay. I'm here. I live in Pembroke Township, and I came to the public hearing for, I think it was safety of the last meeting for the COVID funds that came in for Pembroke. I mean for Pembroke, but for the county of Kankakee. And I'm here to request that because I'm here now because I know that what I'm requesting is going to end up at the Finance Committee. So, and I wanted to bring the members up to speed. We have a very serious issue that's going on now, where there's sewer running in the street, in the ditches, because the lift station has failed. And we need 2 pumps, and we just basically need that lift station redone. As far as the electric and everything is still working, but it needs to be upgraded. During this time of COVID and all of the safety issues, and that's a very serious issue that's going on now. And I'm working with the supervisor to put together proposals to get it done. And what I'm asking now is, I know that the county is going through the preparing to see how to do it, because it was thrust up on you. I know $20-some million is a big infrastructure. You got to have the infrastructure to distribute it. But I'm asking for an emergency to be declared for that particular issue, because it's very dangerous, very dangerous. So, and I'm working with the township supervisor to basically address that issue itself. So basically what I'm asking on behalf of Pembroke and the township supervisor is that we declare that an emergency. I understand that we gotta have the procedures of getting how we're gonna do this, but we need that to get done. So could you put that on your agenda? That's what to at least address that, and so that we can get that public safety and health issue done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other request for public comment? I have no other requests for public comment, and seeing none, we'll move on. The minutes of June 23rd have been distributed. Is there a motion in regard to that? Mr. Donnell to approve?
Oh.
Swanson to second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On Zoom, we got a aye. So we move to, there are no presentations. Finance Department, Mr. McCarty. You have the miscellaneous financial reports in your packet. You can peruse those as Mr. McCarty's coming up. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Gotta appreciate the months where you just have good news to share. So, good news. So my voice was not carrying as far as it usually does. So the For the miscellaneous reports, you'll see sales tax came in very strong again, especially compared to a year ago. And we have well exceeded the loss that we saw last year for the fiscal year. So we'll continue to watch how this trend goes. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions. Income tax continues to come in strong as well. And that is way higher than the averages that we've been seeing. PPRT also came in, has been coming in very strong. So all good news. Bed rentals went up this month as well. So the only one that I don't have an explanation for is why use tax went down, but we'll see how it's not a yearly negative trend, but just month to month a slight downtick there. But overall, that's been continuing to go up as well. So all positive news. So I wanted to point those out and then answer any questions if there are any. So normal monthly reports.
I see no questions, so we'll move on to cash flow, please.
And cash flow, I'm smiling because Nick did the distribution. We have cash in the bank, so don't have a lot to point out there. We opened this one up for the rest of the year, you know, and just kind of showing how, you know, we estimate how the rest of the year will go. So, so this is the good time of year when we get to catch up if we're behind. We were behind a little bit on a few claims, but just managing the cash to make sure we made it. But we're all caught up now, and we'll be able to stay caught up and manage all of that. So everything's in good shape as far as cash flow right now. If there's any questions there.
I see no questions. Do you have any claims recommended not for approval?
I do not have any claims this month.
We move to the monthly claims report. We need a motion to accept the monthly claims report. Mr. Hunter, Mr. Featherling seconds. That would be a roll call vote if there is no discussion.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson? Aye. Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Mr. Payton? Aye. Ms. Parker? Aye. Mr. Kinzinger? Aye. Mr. Fairfield? Aye. Mr. Featherling? Aye. Mr. Dunnell? Aye. Mr. Miller? Aye. Mr. Hunter? Aye. Mr. Wheeler? Aye. Motion carries.
We move to ARPA update and discussion.
Yeah, there's two reports in the packet. Fund 095 and 098 are two ARPA funds, and this is right out of the system as far as what their balances are. This in the 098 report, this doesn't show the election equipment software going out, and also the corner equipment. So just a running total on what has you know, transacted so far that the board has approved on that. So we'll keep you updated as we go. This is where we're at right now. So.
Questions?
Any questions for
Mr. Kinzinger.
I need help. I can't find it. It's in here somewhere. Where, the four claims. Oh, okay.
Got it?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I remember Chairman Wheeler said at one point, Steve, that he was going to, you guys were going to hire a person to oversee the ARPA funds. Is that still a possibility?
We're still considering it. The information and the work on our end for the ARPA fund is very high level. So we're at this point been absorbing it. To get somebody trained or find somebody trained in this would be probably impossible right now. To have them just you know, be ready to go immediately. So the amount of experience and stuff that we have, we're applying to this because of all the federal, the guidelines and requirements are all stuff that we currently do with our normal grants and also the workforce grants. So we're still assessing it, but right now we believe that we'll be able to absorb it.
I might imagine, and I appreciate your feedback, might imagine when these various proposals come in, and the chairman has really stressed the oversight of the expenditures of the funds, how they're done, the accounting, and ensuring that they're not misspent, as he has harped upon. It seems like that's going to be an arduous, action in terms of overseeing half of the money that we've been allocated, and I would hope that strenuous efforts be made to find a person to deal with that, because I'm sure it may be overwhelming for your workforce. Although you guys have received all kinds of awards and so forth, and it's almost sometimes when I look at the various amounts that people, local governments are getting, and what they have to do, and as far as the guidelines and oversight, it seems like you're trying to fight Muhammad Ali with one hand tied behind your back. So good luck to you.
Well, I appreciate the concern, and I just will expand on the requirements and everything there. It is an addition to, but it's not new for us, and that's the thing. It's even what's new is trying to understand what it all can be used for. We're trying to absorb that. But as far as the reporting and the monitoring, we actually do monitoring on for workforce grants as well. So a lot of that, the reporting side is not new. The side that's new is trying to interpret, what it can be used for, and make sure that we don't get any, ourselves or anybody else in trouble, and make sure we filter it correctly. So, but no, we appreciate it. We're monitoring that, and monitoring, how this could flow. So it's not off the table, but we're watching it and trying to see how well we'll do with it. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions on the ARPA? Seeing none, we move on to Moody's bond rating.
Yeah, the other very positive news this month, that we went through our credit analysis, and the county was upgraded to Baa3 with a positive outlook. So not only the positive movement, but also the positive outlook also means that future upgrades are possible and expected. So so that's all very good news. Included the report for you, so you could take the time to read it. Yeah, Kelly, if you don't mind going to the first graph. The first graph is basically what's on the first page of the Moody's report. You just lifted it off to maybe make it clear than the black and white. So this is showing general fund as well as the other operating fund balances, and then the line is the available fund balance as a percentage of revenue. So you can see that all of them, from the dip that we experienced, the deepest in 2015, all the way up to 2020. So that's all good news. And another angle, if you will, to it that's included in your packet is the graph of the three major fund balances. So this is general fund, tort, and pension together, and the ride that it's taken, if you will, the roller coaster ride that we went through, and with the lines depicting each fiscal year and where we're at. So in a graphical sense, these two graphs represent a major part of what Moody's looks at the change, and it also, the change not only in the fund balance, but also cash reserves, not having to borrow TAWs, outside, having to go to outside credit to operate. And then, the other important question, one of the first questions that we had was, what has been the primary drivers of the county's improved financial position in a general fund and other operating funds? And my direct answer to him was strong EAB. And I don't know if some of you remember when we were, when Anita and I did a IMRF presentation, when IMRF changed their percentage, there was a similar graph that we used. Our EAB took a similar roller coaster ride, and that was because of the economic change from the 2009 economic issue. So the EAB has come back as has similar to the fund balances, the strong bed rental program and strong leadership. And I want to congratulate the Chairman Wheeler and Sheriff Downey, as well as the county board, all the other electeds and appointeds, and really everybody at every level, because it took a lot to get out of that hole. It took a lot to go through that hole, and it took a lot to get out of that hole. And the other real important thing, and it might seem minuscule compared to what this graph looks like, but getting through FY20 and COVID and how we responded and how we ended up with a positive at the end of the year made a major impact to Moody's. So we adjusted during a economic downturn, and we came out with a positive. So that's very important. And they used that. That was almost important to them as that whole trip that we took, and watching how we react to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I wanted to make. It was on the call with Moody's, that was really palatable, is when he asked about the impact of 2020 and COVID, and we were able to respond with the board's action of setting that floor of $1 million, that we were proactive, we evaluated cash flow, and the board took action to set a floor for when we would take further action for cost savings. It was really dramatic to them that we were really looking at things in a forward-thinking way to ensure that we didn't end up with this issue again.
So just to finish up on this, if there's other questions, what it means and the plan going forward. At this time, the continued growth and the financial savings are probably the two things that jump out, for me. Similar to like your own personal credit rating, credit score, if you will. When you need to get credit, the better the score, the lower the cost. And so this will lower our cost of borrowing when and if we need it in the future. And so, as well as, we did talk briefly with them about fiscal year 22 and 23, and some of the plans in place. That they were aware of the impact that we have coming, and they liked that we're already dealing with and planning for the potential change with the DHS ICE program and what the state voted to do with that. So that proactive thinking, responsiveness, those are all positive things, and so that's why our credit rating went up, and then also with a positive outlook. So even with that change down at the state, they left a positive outlook and the upgrade because of what they heard as far as how we're reacting, and especially even with the COVID situation. So that's proof that we did react, and then we've also shown and discussed how we are reacting. So that's a summary of that. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions if anybody has any.
Who else do you?
Well, kudos to everybody. I mean, everybody, you know, everybody's been involved in this, so it's everybody's victory, really. So unfortunately, around here, the victory dances don't last very long because we always have something else that we have to deal with. So, yeah, next month we'll probably have to talk about something that isn't as fun. So, yeah. So I'll stop there. So I don't want to.
Is there any other questions for Mr. McCarty? Hearing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item. Thank you. Our next agenda would be the Treasurer's Office, Mr. Afficano. You have the Treasurer report in your packet. Is there a motion to combine and approve those reports? Mr. Miller, Ms. Parker, all in favor of combining and approving, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
That's on Zoom. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. What do you have for us, Mr. McCarty?
As Steve alluded to, we did make our first distribution. I think we distributed to the county about $13.2 million. Steve, I don't think even called me one time, which was unusual in the 5 years I've been here. Second due date is on September 2nd. Mobile home taxes are presently being paid. They're due by the 20th of September. Second distribution will take place in the second week of August. That's typically a small distribution. Third distribution, of course, will be large again because that'll be after the final due date. We continue to encourage people to use alternate sources to pay their taxes. We have the drop box outside, the banks, except for PNC, the mail, online, and last we have in person, of course. I think the bit of good news that I have, so I just took a look before I came up today, and I suspected this, but this confirmed it. I think our levy was about $202.5 million, and as of today, we've collected 59.2%, or $120 million, which is ahead of last year significantly. So things are looking good for our office as well.
Now, the figure you just mentioned in terms of distributing to the county, that would include all funds. I think the report we received in terms of cash flow simply showed the money to the general fund, just so people don't get confused there. All right.
I'll entertain questions, if there are any.
Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, just, you're gonna have a party out to Quality Inn, in terms of properties?
I would dispute the term party, but yes,
Well, it is.
I'm teasing.
You see a lot of friends out there.
Yeah, I'm teasing.
With checkbooks and stuff.
We will, of course, actually the trustee runs that program. That will be in September. It's usually around the 16th. I don't know the exact date today. That's where we will sell excess property that the trustee now owns. We'll dispose of it. And books will be available in my office for sale, listing all the property within the next 2 weeks. They'll be able to be purchased from my office.
Thank you.
But yes, we will have that. And the tax sale is, I believe, the day before Veterans Day, which would be Wednesday, the 10th of November. That'll be our final tax sale. And then following that, people will be able to begin to pay monthly again for their real estate taxes, which continues to go up. And I think this year we're at about 8 million, I believe, online payments. So it's grown every year. Obviously, we'd like that to continue to grow.
It's hard to ask questions when the news is so good, but are there any questions? We simply say, as Mr. Hunter did, could.
Thank you.
All right. Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Downey, you have a monthly update in your report from the sheriff. I think Mr. McCarty had already shared some good news.
Yeah, sorry I missed it. But good news is good news, so that's good.
Just quickly on the monthly update, I think most importantly, and I'll combine a couple things here as we go, but just to give you an idea where we're at population-wise, out of county-wise, we are averaging for 2021 215 U.S. Marshal inmates, and we're averaging 30 ICE detainees. So that totals about 245, between 245, 250 out-of-county inmates and detainees. That has pretty much leveled off, where we haven't seen the decline that we saw post-COVID. Once COVID hit, we are back to accepting those inmates that are that they choose to send us. So we'll continue to do that. Couple troubling, one troubling thing, not to bring bad news, but this is not anything that hasn't been going on for the last year and even prior, really, but it's been talked about before, but the domestics that are occurring in our county are atrocious. They are literally atrocious. Every day you look at our custody list, and there are multiple inmates who have been arrested for domestic battery. And we continue to work with our local social service agencies, but the domestic batteries are problematic in our county. And we will continue to work with the state's attorney's office, with the social service agencies, to see what options we have to reduce that. So just a heads up.
Mr. Kidner.
Certainly that's a tragedy. Do you see any root cause? It's one overarching factor for this?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that can contribute to it, and especially during COVID, people were confined in the same area for.
You think that's what it is?
That's a lot of it, but we haven't seen the decline since we've somewhat opened up. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
That's the scary part. While it's never okay, being confined in that same household or whatever when we were locked down, I mean, contributed to it a little bit. But once we've opened back up, I mean, it hasn't. If it's done anything, it's continued to increase. So.
Mr. Hunt.
Yeah, you guys may recall the State's Attorney Rowe has talked about the escalating numbers of domestics, and I'm sure all of you were here to hear the comments that he made in terms of the reasons why people confined together. And the sheriff says it hasn't really declined since we've opened up, but there are probably residual manifestations of what's going on. So, that's something we're going to have to contend with, and I'm sure the sheriff and the state's attorney are on it, as well as the court system in terms of those numbers going up, and we have to deal with it, with our internal systems.
Well, and that's a great point, and I think also, you should know that responding to a domestic battery call is probably one of the most dangerous calls that police respond to. So, obviously we're cognizant of that, but, the more calls there are, the greater opportunity there are for something bad to happen. So, but our guys do a great job in de-escalating most of it. And they'll continue to do that as we move forward.
Mr. Feathering.
Yeah, Mike, in a perfect world, what would your suggestion be to? I mean, do you see a trend in particular type? You say domestic; it's a pretty wide topic, right? There's quite a few categories in there, individual categories. Physical.
I mean, there's a lot of ways you can define it. I mean, it's family member domestics, it's spouse domestics. I mean, there's a lot of it. So it's really a mix. Mm-hmm. So and that what leads us back to that whole being confined in that you know, lockdown time frame. So yeah, it's multiple. I mean, it's not just spousal, it's family, it's parent, child, it's sibling. So there's a lot of it.
So that type of thing is state funded properly. When you have group sessions, or you have a therapist that goes to the house, or a social worker that tries to interact or something, that's all through the state, right? That's not through the county?
No, there's obviously social service agencies that do deal with those a lot of times after the fact.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, in some cases, people do benefit from those agencies prior to. They still have that option to, you know, before that ultimately happens. So yeah, but it is. Some of it's funded through the state. Some of it, like everything else, funding has been reduced. So everybody's working more for less resources.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Thank you.
Sheriff,
Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
do you feel that we're having more problems with mental illness? It's really causing some of the problems?
Oh, I think that factors into it, Dr. Polk. I really do. There's a lot of those issues out there that, you know, unfortunately haven't been identified until, you know, after the fact. So, but yeah, that's definitely one of the issues that's happening.
Any other questions for the sheriff? Do you have other items?
Yeah, I got a couple, and this more or less informational. As you all know, we've kind of gotten on a schedule for vehicles, and I'm not here to ask for money today. I just didn't want to be the downer to all the good news, so I'm not asking for money. However, something you should know, we had a squad car lease from 2017 that is paid off, and Steve, correct me if I misrepresent this in any way. 2019, the squad car lease will be paid off in January of 2022, and our 2020 lease will be paid off in June of 2023. I bring this up because obviously, at some point, whether it's the next criminal justice meeting, we will be asking for cars. That's a great point, and that's my next point. Right now, if you recall, and I don't know if this committee was made aware, but we lost a vehicle back in October or November of 2020. It was one of the storms, a tree fell on the vehicle, it got totaled. We ordered a new vehicle in November of 2020, and we just found out last week that vehicle has not even gone into production yet. So my guess is we won't get that vehicle till 2022. Now, we've gotten insurance money that will pay for it once we get it, but that's where they're at. As far as squad cars and in our case, animal control vehicles, which we've already approved to buy, we can't find transit vans. Transit vans are nowhere to be found. And we've asked, and we've searched, and we've begged. So we are limping along with what we have as best we can. Obviously, those animal control vehicles there's gonna be some maintenance costs associated with them as we keep them running. The same thing with vans. Our last, we have one van lease that we started in January of 2018. Those two vans will be paid off by October of 2022. We're in need of vans, but we can't find them and don't know how long it'll be before we get them. So just to keep the committee up to date on where we're at with that. So no, I'm not asking for any money today, but just to keep you guys advised. So, and to finish off, we have been working with the state's attorney's office on a tow ordinance. Some of you who've been here a while may have remembered that way back in the day, and I mean way back in the day, prior state's attorneys administrations, we tried to enact a tow ordinance and we were told that we couldn't do it legally. We continued to press because we thought we could, and through Jim Rowe's office and their civil division, we are told that we can. So there will be an ordinance forthcoming that will allow us to collect $500 for impounded vehicles. It won't amount to a lot of money, but it'll be a little revenue nonetheless. But I can't imagine the loads of money that we've not collected because of it. So credit to Jim Rowe's office. But that, again, will go back through the committees, criminal justice, probably back to you before it goes to the full county board.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, does that mirror the cities? 'Cause I remember there's something.
It'll be
around-
close because it'll include impound, we impound cars for DUIs. It'll include impounds for ATVs. It'll include impounds for vehicles. So people driving on a revoked license or suspended license.
Something different, but within your realm of jurisdiction, and it's probably more directed to our the local municipality in terms of gun charges. Would it help, you think, to charge gun cases federally as opposed to state ordinances or local ordinances?
I hate to speak for Jim Rowe, but I know that in dealing with him, if he feels like there's a better federal case for a particular case, he will move it to the federal court. So, because the sentences are more severe.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anything else for the sheriff? If not, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
We have no report from the auditor's office again, and I don't see him here. So I guess is there any other business that needs to come before the committee? Nothing under other. Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought I should mention that we will need bids on repair if we are going to consider helping the township out with the lift pumps. So we need those bids. It's been a week and a half. So if we can get those, it can't be an emergency if we don't have the bids. So just saying, we can't act if we don't have a price.
Okay.
We work.
Just saying.
We are working on the price, and I'll bring it to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Payton. Then we'd move on to old business power washing bid update. Wes,
It's all labor. Yeah.
Mr. Andrews, if you'd come on up and give us that information. Morning.
Hi. Good morning. Just an update on the power washing. We opened bids at last month's Highways and Buildings Committee meeting, and after looking the bids over and then considering where I'm at with my budget this year, the chairman and I have had multiple conversations regarding that work, and I wanted to bring it to this committee because it's certainly financial in nature. I'm over budget. I talk about it every time in my meetings. I'm probably over $100,000 over budget right now. Some of that is attributed to some new employees. We've got UPS, a new UPS that's being installed out at Jerome Combs. That's going to be a very significant expense. We've got courthouse renovations that are on the horizon. So I'm not disputing that the old jail and some of our facilities need to be power washed. They certainly do. I think the timing of it is not the best right now. It's a project that I'd like to possibly look at next year, depending on how things end this year for my department. But I guess we wanted to bring it to this committee, and Andy, if you've got anything to add, just to kind of bring you up to speed and see what the committee's pleasure is and if you agree.
Is there anything from the committee?
While I don't have the numbers right here in front of me, it was there was the need to come back to finance for approval because you were looking at the nature of the bids. The lowest bidder was a chemical wash, which, you know, there was really no guarantee of it being sufficient and working, if you will. And then the next bid was roughly what? Almost $20,000 more.
28,000. The low bid was 15. The next bid was 28, and then they went up considerably from there, upwards of 60,000. And the chemical wash was quoted because of the nature of the building being as old as it is, and there's pieces of the building that are crumbling. You can go over there and take a look. You know, it's in, you know, some of the spots are in bad shape. So that's why that particular method was recommended. So
the in my opinion was the cost was enough for the committee to consider which one you want to do, or if you want to wait, because that was after the bids were open, and then the state took $5 million a year away from us in revenue. So it warranted another conversation for this committee to decide if you want to go forward. And if you do, which version do you want to go forward with? The lowest bidder with a chemical wash, or is it a qualified bid? I don't want to get into that. Do you want a regular power wash, or do you want the chemical wash? That's kind of where you're at.
And for me, I think it's financial in nature. Like I said, you know, just trying to be a good steward of funds, you know, trying to manage my budget the best that I can. I would feel more comfortable if we could, you know, look at this project next year. So that's where I'm coming from.
Now, are you recommending a delay for all power washing or just for the old jail? Because I believe that there were two portions, this building plus the old jail.
It was all bid together, the annex, the old jail, and the first floor here. So yeah, it would be all of it. And like I said, I'm not debating that it needs to be done. I just think, you know, we have better use of funds right now with some of the project and repairs that are on the horizon.
Mr. Fairfield.
Could we possibly have the opinion of the sheriff on what he feels should be done, if it should be done now or next year? He's here.
If he wants to comment, I'd open the floor to him.
This is something that can wait if we choose to wait. I mean, we want to do it right. We want to do it cost effectively. And I don't want to run Wes's budget up any more than it already is.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, Wes, had you may want to consider doing on-sites in terms of where they've done the chemical thing that the chairman talked about and what you talked about, and see what would be the best in terms of effect.
Sure.
I would think, you know, go somewhere and check them out, various ones.
No, I agree.
Mr. Kissinger.
I move we accept Wes's recommendation. It's a financial consideration at this time, not a methodology.
That's a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Swanson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I think at this point that could be a voice vote. So all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 That's an aye on Zoom. All opposed, nay. Motion carries then.
Thank you.
All right. Next agenda item, Clemens Employee Benefit Consulting Agreement. Anita, you speaking to that?
I'll go ahead and introduce Mike Lynch is here, who is our benefits consultant. I spoke about this yesterday. Mike, or Clemens and Company, functions on our behalf. They bid out our insurance every year. They ensure that it's competitive. They negotiate on our behalf. So Mike is here. There's an introduction letter which indicates the savings to the county that Mike has negotiated for us in the past. And what we're asking for is a renewal of that agreement. And Mike Lynch, if you want to step up and field any questions regarding his agreement or the value that he brings to the county. But what we're looking to do is to renew this contract with Clemens and Company.
Good morning.
Good morning. You want me to take questions, or?
I think that'd be fine. Mr. Kissinger.
So that we have a legitimate motion on the floor, I move that we accept this letter.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Dunhill seconds. Let's open this up for discussion. Mr. Lynch, is there any particular comments you want to make?
I think back in 2013, one of the things that was said as we discussed the first contract, which we did for $13,500 a year. And it was well below what had been paid previous to that. And the question was, why were we doing that? And the answer was pretty simple. We wanted to prove that we thought we could do a job saving money at a time when I think the county was in pretty poor shape. And if we could do that down the road, we might ask for additional compensation. And so in the memorandum, you'll see that there were years that there were some high 28, 27% increases, which in 2 years we negotiated down and made plan changes, I would add, which is an important deviation from what existed prior to the next year, and got them down to single-digit levels. Now, having said that, that's not always possible because things can get, a lot worse. But in those years up till 2020, I would say, we were fairly lucky, other than the 2 years with double-digit increases, to have some pretty good experience years. One was 4.9, which we got down to 1.8 or something of that nature. I can read it individually, but over time, we've endured some increase in costs, as has everybody. I'm not saying that we're unique in that sense, but what we do present to the county is unique in the sense that there are a number of compliance issues that you're, as a provider of employee benefits, are responsible for. And under the Affordable Care Act, under the ERISA, or excuse me, not ERISA, but several other acts which regulate what you must do for employee benefits. So we have to stay up to date on those and then advise our customers on those and put them into action. Additionally, we have a human resources attorney on, we keep them ongoing. And in addition to that, other increases in assistance compensation and such. So what we're asking for in essence is right now it's $13,500. We'd like that to increase to $17,000, which is a $3,500 increase in the first year, and in the second year to $20,000, which I believe works out to about $6,500. And again, back to our original discussion, over that time period that I put in the memorandum, there's close to $2 million worth of savings. And so rather than saying, with all the positive financial news that you've had here today, rather than saying that comes back and out of today's dollars, but we saved $2 million and we like to share in it to that degree. And I would add that in the first 2 years of our takeover, there were roughly 350 to 400 interactions with some of the employees because of some of the transfer questions, and there was an HRA at that time which caused a lot of problems transferring from one company to another. That's part of our job, to provide those services, to solve those problems where and when we can. And we will continue to do that. In the service agreement, it's listed item by item, but I wanted to point out the dollar amounts are on page 7. The last 2 bullet points added into the consulting agreement. And so having said that, I'm open for any questions or any additional. Yes, sir.
Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, HRA, what is that?
Health reimbursement account.
Okay.
And, you may see that again, in the future, we got away from it because luckily we had some lower increases that we didn't have to utilize, but as a tool to combat health insurance increases, we may have to engage in that again. And one last comment I would say is that, you know, this year has not been a banner year for the experience on the health insurance, and we're already working on that. To that degree, we have to have the renewal come in first, which should be at the end of the month of August, probably the 3rd or 4th week. We will be discussing with Mrs. Speckman the need for census materials to send out with RFPs to go to the marketplace. And so you're aware, you know, in the past we've had limited carrier engagement because of the compression of all the companies that used to be in the marketplace, and due to the Affordable Care Act, many people or many entities aren't into business anymore. We're seeing some spurs to that with several different companies, and as opposed to having 2 or 3, we're hopeful in this next go round we might have up to 4 to 5 entities that we can go out. But we'll send it to anybody that can offer us a quote for the similar product lines that we're looking for. So we're already working on that, and you know, we're going to move forward as quickly as the renewals in. Then we send that out, and we'll get the numbers back to us, and see if we can find anything that's any better than what we have right now.
Ms. Speckman, did you?
Just a couple things I wanted to comment on. In terms of a resource, the Clemens team and MSL benefits are really invaluable to Kelly and I. They really act as a go-between between us and our employees and on difficult claims or questionable claims and the insurance company. Having someone that can speak the language to the insurance company and get the results they did is really invaluable. And in terms of being able to utilize, have them do the bidding is a great resource. The second thing I did want to mention, this was sent up to the state's attorney for review. I did hear back from them. They have no concerns with the agreement as it's written.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a short maybe correction or clarification on page 7 where it says $17,000 annually, January 1st, 2022 to February 31st, 2022. I think that was a typo. Should be
yes,
December.
You're correct.
Just want to make sure we weren't paying that amount for 2 months.
I did that without the help of the woman that looks over my shoulder. Well, for obvious reasons. Thank God for thesaurus and spelling corrections.
All right. Any other questions? If not, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Yeah, present.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling? Mr. Dunnell?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
Just
Thank you. Yes.
It was unrelated to what he was doing before, but I asked this question of ICRMT yesterday. What's the industry doing, at least as far as talking about in terms of the reinsurance market, inflation, what the impact that they might be seeing on rates, if not this year, the following year? Obviously, your money's worth a lot less. Inflation, if we were kicking around self-funding, an HRA is partial self-funding, where we take more risk, but there's more reward at that angle. You know, we're looking at Arpa funds, which could be considered critical infrastructure. Should we be considering establishing a self-insurance risk pool on our own as a way to leverage cost savings going forward?
I think the short answer is yes. For the reason that I don't want to get too in depth about this, but one of the things that goes with a self-funding arrangement is that you have the money set aside to create a reserve. And that reserve, in essence, is there for you know, the ups and downs of cash flow. And as you look at it, it will become obvious, and the underwriter at any carrier will tell us what they believe your first year reserve should look like. Reserves are for a variety of reasons, cash flow, but then if you determine that you don't want that fund anymore and you want to go back to the fully funded arrangement, which exists right now, that's what you have. You pay X and they pay the claim. In fully funded arrangements, you take risk by buying insurance on a high dollar deductible, if you will. There's that kind of insurance, and then there's an aggregate deductible, if you will. So if it goes up and over on an individual claim of X, it's paid for by the insurance company. If it goes over that aggregate arrangement, it's paid for by the insurance carrier. So what happens when it's not properly looked at is that you've got these cash flow times when it, instead of being on a level basis, it goes up. And if there's not a dollar set aside to take care of those rainy days, if you will, then that's where the problem occurs. So, you know, I look at more of it in answer to your question as a reserve problem as opposed to, you know, anything else. I hope that goes to the question.
Sure. With the reinsurance market too on the back end, if those rates are going to go up, we lose that.
The thing that you have to remember with the reinsurance markets at this point, Andy, is that many of the carriers, let's just take Blue Cross as an example, are not allowing us to go to the marketplace to search for reinsurance at this point. Rather, they are demanding that you use their reinsurance product as an example. And the reason for that is kind of understandable, but sometimes it doesn't make any sense. But they don't want to have to go out electronically and try to corroborate their electronic systems with someone else's, so they can, you know, you have to talk to each other on these things. The claims have to run through systems to be processed, and that's not always the case, or it takes an exaggeratingly long time to process. And so a Blue Cross, as an example, they want to stick with their own product because they talk to themselves on that occasion. But there are other carriers out there, like third-party administrators, who process claims that have multiple options. So in that scenario, you'd be talking to those guys and they'd be searching the marketplace for the best reinsurance. So it's kind of a, you know, from carrier to carrier, it may differ.
Sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. That brings up something interesting stuff there. Are there any hybrids out there with maybe several counties consolidating to do self-insurance? And my other question with self-insurance, and I think it was Anita who gave us some information regarding our aging workforce. That may be a vicissitude in terms of doing some self-insurance. Would that be a factor?
Yes, it can be. It can be you know, as a group ages, not a lot of positive things happen.
We do break down.
I can talk about that. Yeah. But, what I mean by that is, as groups ages, we see a certain amount of things. Right now, we're seeing some large claim activity. In self-funding, you have the ability to do a lot more work, manufacturing differentiations and benefits, if you will, and attacking problems than you do in fully funded, because fully funded groups, as an example, are bound under HIPAA privacy, where self-funded cases are not. Now, me or you as a participant in the group can't go out and talk about somebody either way, but you know, you've got to watch that. But you know, going back to the association question of multiple employers, there are some of those out there, but there are good things and bad things about associations, of which I know about because our company handles a very large association. And we see good things in terms of when times are bad, you know, you can always get coverage in an association, but once that goes wrong, same thing bad about it is the same thing about a group when things go bad. So, you know, there's a yin and a yang to that end, and I think self-funding has to be done knowing that you're going to have some bad times. And again, I go back to that reserve question, that if it's set up, that reserve has to be looked at and set aside. And you know, I think the Finance Committee has to understand it, as well as, you know, Mr. McCarty and the chairman would, and deal with it, because that rainy day fund is going to be used at some point.
It sounds like the details of all of this, if need be, may have to even go to a subcommittee rather than take a lot of time for the full committee. So unless there's some really more depth questions, why, let's move on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Rebuild Illinois Round 2 Transit Grant. Mr. Wilson? You have one page in your packet. You can give us a little background here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I figured I'd save you the aggravation of having to turn around to watch me. So this is the second round from IDOT for capital projects, and we did a round 1 rebuild. We actually received an grant for about $82,000 on a round 1, which was the new radios for our vehicles, and we're going through our capital needs assessment for this year, and we're requesting the ability to sign a grant for the chairman to authorize a resolution and sign a grant for 4 new vehicles and some funds for a bus barn location. Our current bus barn, we're on a month-to-month rent. We lease a space, and there's limited space in the current location as we kind of look to expand the system, and we think it would be a good idea. It's in our capital needs assessment to get that under the control of us as the county, as opposed to leasing space from someone else.
Mr. Kissinger.
Does this grant imply additional funds from the county?
So no, in the most recent conversation with IDOT, this is 100% grant funded. Our request is about 1.07 million, so 700 grand in land ac, and then 360,000 in vehicles.
Thank you.
Other question, Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, is there a maximum grant ceiling?
There is not a grant ceiling. We requested that information from DOT. It was not discussed at the call. I can say that in the round 1 allocations for rural, the mean was about 360,000. The average request was 1.3 and some change. And that has some like $8 or $9 million outliers in it. So, I mean, we got 82,000 for the first grant round, so we're asking for a little over $1 million this time. But they did not indicate that there's a cap. I can say there's some large systems that received, like Rides Mass Transit got $8.9 million or something for that, but they haven't indicated that. I will say that the grant application is weighted towards our capital needs assessment, so we keep as a transit system our list of capital needs, and so the scoring based on the way we're looking at the application. These are a couple projects that we had in our capital needs assessments up through 2025, so we thought these would be good things to put into a 2021 application to hopefully meet our needs. There are some additional capital needs within our capital needs assessment, but they fall a little further out, and then, I mean, that would be detrimental to the scoring of the application if we started to ask for things that are maybe too far out in advance. They're giving us a weighted scoring based on that CNA. So,
what date of determination?
Applications due the 31st of August. They did not indicate when they would be. They said November, and in a couple of conversations we would hope to be a little faster than that. Obviously, all of the rebuild programs through the state of Illinois are funded by the portion of the capital bill, which was backed by some less than successful attempts to garner tax dollars, and so we're kind of, it's a moving target. But some of the other rebuilds that we've been working on have had longer lead times than we would want, and I think the sheriff hit it. How quickly will vehicles be available? And so this is, we're going to get the vehicles in. It does certainly help our rolling stock if we were able to add 4 new vehicles to the fleet, and then move some to reserve would be certainly helpful for our fleet.
Is there a motion to approve having the grant application? Mr. Fairfield, Mr. Hunter with a second. At this point, we're not spending any money, so I think approving, maybe just to be safe, let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker? Aye. Mr. Kinzinger? Aye. Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
I have no other items on the agenda, so Mr. Payton, do you have something?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. When I want to comment on the public comment that Mr. Bay made, this is the second time that he have approached the board in some form or the other to request some emergency funds. This is a situation that he's as familiar with it as I am as a former township supervisor. He's more aware of that pump than I am. But my concern is for the community. I had planned for this meeting to have sufficient bids for the work in the motors to repair this. It has been 2 weeks, but it's been much longer than that because this light has been blinking for at least a year. And I think that if it's any way that the finance committee can look at it, and I'll bring the bids to the full board, or because we can't keep waiting, and this is 2 weeks, and then by the time the finance committee meet again, it would be another month. And I don't think a community should have to wait that long in an emergency situation. So the only way this money could be advanced for a task like this is that the finance committee would have to authorize it. And unfortunately, we don't have all the bids information as of today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
The only other option would be to bring it to full board instead of waiting a month to finance committee. I would call that an emergency. I think most people here would. I think we had a general agreement that we thought that was an appropriate use of the ARPA funds. I don't know where the village is at right now. If they have the funds to cover it, and we could maybe cost share with them in Hopkins Park, that if they need it done sooner, they may have a village meeting coming up before we have our next meeting. So I think we're willing, to work with whoever to get it done as quickly as possible. We just need to know what it is before we approve the dollar amount. And it can't really just be one price. We got to have a couple people shooting us a number. That might be part of the problem. So I don't know if the folks agree. We can't vote on it because we don't have an agenda item or anything like that. But just full board is the next opportunity is all I mentioned. We got 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's the sentiments of the, Mr. Chairman, the board to place it on the full county agenda. That's the proposal, Mr. Chairman?
That's what I'm hearing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do we need to place it on the
No. No.
They're committed to do that.
Okay.
Is there any other items? If not, Are there any other kind of motions? Ms. Parker?
Chairman, entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Polk.
Dr. Polk seconds that motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.